Hello, this is Jon Speelman with a roundup of the playoffs at the Sinquefield Cup, which saw Magnus Carlsen taking on Ding Liren after Carlsen caught up in the final round. And Carlsen certainly started as the favourite because, well, he's won the last million playoffs or tiebreaks he's been involved in. I don't know how many a million is, but it's certainly quite large number. But it didn't go that way. So I'm just going to go through the four games in which Ding was extremely impressive. We start with the first game, and so Ding played a semi-Slav, called a semi-Slav because you don't have the bishop outside the pawn chain. In a full Slav you get the bishop outside the pawn chain. Bishop g5 is the normal move, but Magnus played g3. Knight e5, knight d7. You can go bishop b4 as well, when knight takes c4 is catastrophic because of queen d5, but white goes bishop b2, bishop g2, knight d5, bishop d2. Has quite a lot of play for a pawn. I don't know even if black can keep it. Anyway, that didn't happen. So no bishop b4 either, no. Knight bd7 takes b5. It's been played a few times, and normally they go knight d2, I think. I found a game that Caruana beat Shirov, long game, in Italy in 2010, but it wasn't especially convincing in the opening at all. So white's maybe got the better pawn structure, but his king isn't great. It's a useful move, getting some space. Bishop b7, I thought he might castle. Maybe he's worried about, I don't know, there isn't a knight g5 yet. He went king c2, he needs to get his pieces over. Castles. Well, his main problem is that this bishop is hanging in lots of lines, and he played rook hd1, but maybe he should just have played a move like bishop f3 to defend his bishop. Because now the problem after rook hd1 is black plays f5. And if you go takes bishop g5, then black can, if he likes, go here, takes, and you got the two bishops. And I would say that black was better. Actually, for some reason, the engine I was using, Houdini, said it was equal, but it tends to say everything is equal. Anyway, Magnus decided he needed to bail out, so his opening's gone disastrously wrong, really. Knight d6 check. It would have been best to go knight g5, bishop takes, rook takes, bishop takes, rook takes, bishop e3. This is a fairly okay version in which nothing very much happens. So this would have been a more sensible way to do it, in fact. Black's a pawn up, but it's not a very good pawn. As it was, Ding got a little bit more after this. Magnus had to bail out by taking, and g5 is trying to isolate this pawn, but Magnus defended himself. It's a good move, preparing to play h4. I thought that f4 might be a problem, but actually I think you can just go takes, and you're basically okay, allegedly. Certainly if pawn takes, you just go here. I was wondering if you could go rook takes, but if you go rook takes this one, rook g1, this rook is already active, and pawn takes, I guess you can go bishop here now, can't you? Rook to there, you're just in time. Just in time to play bishop f6 and take this. And I suppose it's okay. It's not very pleasant. None of it is pleasant. I thought he'd play f4, but in fact he went king d7, a3, and then he went g4. Closing the position is really saying, I haven't got very much. b4, blocking it up, and they moved some pieces backwards and forwards for a while and agreed a draw. So it wasn't a great start for Carlsen at all. He ended up having to equalise as white and grovel a bit. Second game was also a draw, but quite hard work for Carlsen. In the Catalan, it's much better to have played bishop g2 than knight f3, because you have immediate pressure on the diagonal. Carlsen took. I don't think he... I hadn't seen this before, it's just a way to play the position, it's interesting. So, I thought e5 was absolutely fine in this position. Just get an e5, I thought he'd be fine. h6 is a bit lackadaisical. Now I wanted to play c5, but the problem is the knight takes this, just wins. It wins material. If c4 you take, and if takes you go here, and you've won, I don't know, a couple of pawns for nothing. So this wasn't possible. So he had to start grovelling a bit. Still absolutely fine for black, in fact, I think. Now you're threatened to go knight a4 and to take control of this square. It's starting to become critical. I thought he'd go this rook, but actually he moved his rook back. That's obviously the rook is now protected by its mate, so you can't play knight a4. a3, don't know, probably a reasonable move. c5, and even now it was a little bit... Black would like to play b7 to b5 to b7 with absolute equality, but here his pawns are a wee bit weak. I thought he'd go a4, but actually then you go queen a8 to hit it. You can't go b3 because then the knight stomps in here. So you have to go here, but then you can just play here, 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 and that's just a draw. So that wasn't actually very dangerous. And what happened was, so he took it, and now this knight ergonomically protects this pawn. And the important thing is that when black puts a knight in d5, it's not completely stable because e4 might happen one day. So the engine thinks this is completely equal, but I thought it was still required a little bit of play. I think if take, nothing happens. You take with a horse, and if rook up, you just go here. And you're absolutely fine. Nothing happens at all. So he tried rook c5, queen b3, g2, f3, blocking the diagonal, queen a6, king here. I mean, I looked at this and thought that rook takes is a good move. And indeed knight takes is immediately perpetual, if not more. But this is actually good for white, or certainly better for white. I mean, black could play this position, but it wouldn't be much fun. He'd be in quite a lot of trouble, I think. So, anyway, Ding played some more sensible moves. Good move, pinning the rook. Preparing to play a3 again. Can't play a3 at the moment because of rook to there check, which would be a catastrophe totale. And so they agreed to draw. So they got to the Blitz, and one imagined that Carsten was going to do well in this, but he didn't at all. First Blitz game, another Catalan, and he got it very badly wrong. He didn't know what to do after this move. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if you go rook a7 or... Let's see what Queen c7 played a lot, rook a7, bishop d6 played. Okay, he played queen c7, d4. I think e5, knight f5 really isn't good because after g6, knight e3, your pieces are quite ergonomic. I thought he might do that. Basically, white has a lead in development here, and black has big problems because of this diagonal. He can't easily develop his pieces. Magnus had a think and decided he needed to try to bail out, which he did. I thought queen e4 might be a move, but then knight f6 wins, so that was pretty dopey of me. So they got to this ending, which I thought Magnus would be okay. He's lost a pawn, but his position has improved quite a lot, really. I thought he'd go king f7, he went bishop f5, in fact it's a good move. And he decided to bail out into the ending, which is sort of sensible, but it's not fun at all. He manages to eliminate a pawn, but... Okay, the problem is, if the rooks weren't on the board you could agree a draw. If the bishops weren't on the board, black would be in quite a lot of trouble. But I don't know how if it would be much worse than with rooks and opposite bishops on the board, because essentially with 3 pawns against 4 on the king side you're going to be attacked. So he played h5, Magnus, which makes sense. I thought White might go h3 and g4, but I guess we didn't. He went here anyway and fixed this pawn. And now it's just very difficult for Black. There was a moment when he was okay, actually. That may be a bit premature. I suppose he's going to have to do it at some point. He should have gone rook b3 here to threaten bishop e2. And apparently that's okay, but it looks quite scary. I think it goes... Let's see how it goes. I got a variation for this one. Am I going to bother finding it? Yeah, I should be able to find it. Okay, the variation goes rook b3, rook checks, king g8, king up. Sorry, bishop d6 he wanted to go first. I guess if king up you go bishop f7, do you? So bishop d6, bishop b2, king f5, bishop takes f3, e5, rook d3, stops the bishop, it stops the pawn advancing for a moment, which is important of course. Bishop b8 to threaten things, rook d5, and basically you're okay now, because you can't go king g6 because of mate, and if you go king here, bishop here, takes, black is properly placed now. This pawn controls both these black squares. Even without it you'd be drawing, I suppose, but it wouldn't be much fun. Okay, but that was difficult, and Magnus was very, very short of time by this stage, and they played some moves. Sorry, let's go back. So he actually went rook d7. g4 takes. I wasn't sure which way he should take it with the pawn. This is terribly difficult because this pawn's weak and this pawn shields the king. It's hard for Black to arrange to attack any of the pawns. What actually happened was that he got an e5, which is a big deal. And Magnus was playing all this instantly. They play in St. Louis, they play with delay rather than increment, which personally I think is horrid. I understand why they do it, by having a delay. Possibly they shorten the time the games take, but also it means you can't build up time, but it also means you can be flagged, which is what actually happened. Though Magnus defended himself marvellously now. Now he's just lost because his king's in the back rank and g7 is a huge target. He should just have gone king g5 now. He relaxed a move or so too early. So for instance you can go king g5, which threatens bishop e5, rook e8, bishop here. Actually you don't even need to do that. You can push, takes, and you just can't get round to do any harm. So for instance bishop d3, bishop checks, king here, bishop e7, then you'll play bishop f6 next. And the best you can do now is bishop takes g6. White's just planning to go bishop f6, rook f7, rook h7 check, and rook h8 mate. You can see just how horrible it is. But he didn't do that. He did it a little bit badly. He went... And this is still winning, I think, but now Magnus defended himself marvellously. The problem was that he didn't have any time. So they played 500,000 moves. I think they probably repeated 3 times once, but of course they didn't know. Who would know if you repeated or not? Many, many, many moves, not 50 of them. And at this moment I think Magnus went to move the piece, his hand slipped, and he went down to 0.00 and lost. This was not a terribly satisfactory way for the game to end. On the other hand, that's the rules they were playing under. So if that's the rules they were playing under, fair enough, it's what happens. And so let's continue with the last game. I was just checking, broadcast seems to be happy. Carlsen against Ding. Carlsen had to win this but he didn't succeed. He played d3, just played normal moves. White's a tempo down here. I don't know if you can start taking twice, maybe. Maybe you should. Now, this position normally White would have played d4 and 1 rather than d3 to 4. And also, the bishop, often you get this position with the bishop on b7, and it has to go to here to be in its best square. So White's 2 or 3 tempi away from where he should be. This is a nice move. It prepares possibly to do this. He gave up his bishop to try to get some attack. Remember, this is a blitz game. And he tricked him with knight c6, which wasn't supposed to happen. But it's not a big disaster at all. Takes, takes, takes. Now, queen d3, I think you maybe just go bishop e6 and you're about equal. You've got a good pawn for the exchange. Magnus tried this and this, but now Ding found the excellent move bishop a8. So he's threatened to come to this diagonal. If Magnus had only had to draw, he might have played this, because actually after here, it seems to only be a draw. Bishop to here, queen takes pawn, check here, check. And you certainly don't go up, because then check here, checkmate. But you just go back again, and that should be a draw by repetition. Rook c2 isn't a good move because of... Why is rook c2 not a good move here? Because of rook e2, presumably. Rook e2, and you've made a square for your king. And suddenly you're okay. It has all gone wrong because the queen protects the rook also. So basically should have done that, but it would have been a best to draw. And what happened? Sorry, I'm still trying to get back to the main line. He went here, and now black just has a wonderful position for the exchange. You know, if you could do this, you'd have a position-ish. He grovelled around. That's actually playable still. Now Magnus's last chance was to play h4 here to stop this bishop coming in, and that would still have been unclear, I think. But he played queen a3, and now the bishop comes in, and now there is a big problem, because as soon as the knight moves, because this is pinned, there is going to be checkmate here. He tried this, knight e7, and he resigned, because after queen takes knight, there is rook h1 mate. So Ding played tremendously well and really deserved to win. And he's a marvellous player. I'm incredibly impressed with him, with how he's played in this tournament. And we shall see. I'm sure Magnus will bounce back, but there we are. That was the day's play. I very much enjoyed streaming commentary of the Sinquefield Cup. And I've been persuaded that I will do some of the chess 960 next week. I'm not proficient in chess 960 myself. I've never really played it. So I'm hoping that I will have a stream maybe 2 days next week to be announced, and that people will come and help me with the openings and apprise me of the sort of things you do in the weird positions that they play. Okay, so I hope I'll see some people next week at twitch.tv/Jon Speelman, and I hope you've enjoyed the Sinquefield Cup as much as I have.